Hello friends, it's Christy. Welcome to Bitly Diddly Has Plans. In today's video, we are taking an in-depth look at the Archer and Olive Acrylograph pens. So let's get started. Alrighty friends, so I have three of the Archer and Olive Acrylograph pen collections. I have the primary, the Cool Fall, and the Spring Vernal collection. And they are a water-based acrylic, non-toxic ink pen. They work kind of like a paint pen, I guess you could call them that. And so what I thought I'd do is go through the basics of these pens as well as do a pen test for you with each of my collections. So starting out with the packaging, it's quite a bit of packaging on these pens, but it's nice because you want to store these pens flat or horizontally, and so the packaging is actually really nice for them. On the inside cover gives you some basic directions for use. You need to activate these pens when you're using them, and so how you do that is you give them a really good shake. It takes quite a while to shake and get these pens activated, I will say. The first time you're using them, like a good 20 seconds. And then you want to press the tip of the pen against the blending palette, which is on this side of the packaging, blending palette, you can see there. And that will help get the ink flowing into the tip or the nib of the pen. And then of course, because they're kind of more of a paint type pen, you want to make sure that you're wiping them off afterwards, putting the pen back, the cap back on tight, and keeping them stored nice and clean. So that's sort of the inside cover. And then this is the primary collection. So these pens come in two nib sizes, the 3mm and the 0.7mm. So this primary collection I got in the 3mm. I purchased it in this broader, sort of wider tip because I thought with the primary colors I might be doing more larger surface areas, like coloring sort of a background in. So you can really kind of see how nice and broad that tip is. And so looking at the barrel of the pen, this really kind of reminds me, this white look with the colored cap, reminds me a lot of like a zebra mild liner. So if you look at the zebra mild liner, they're kind of similar in their design of the barrel of their pen. There's the color, like I said, in the cap, and then there's a little swatch here of color on the pen itself. What the pen doesn't have is actually the name of the color. So you can see that's all that's on the barrel of the pen. So that was kind of a bummer. And it's not listed here in the packaging either. So what I did discover with the help of my friend Aaliyah from AJ Plans is if you go online, some of the collections, the pens are also sold individually. And if you go and look at the individual pens, you can find the color names there. So if we're talking about this primary collection that I have here, I was able, because these are also sold individually, I was able to find the colors. It's pretty standard in this primary, but it'll make more sense in my Cool Fall collection. So we've got white, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, black. And this pen here with this clear cap, that's the blending pen. So primary colors, obviously pretty straightforward. There's also a couple of extra nibs in here. So if your nib starts to fray or crack or anything like that, there are two replacements in here so that you can just pop out the nib. And I've done it before. I don't know if you can do it on the blender. Let me see if I can show you. It just pulls right out and then you just push it right back in. You can see I was playing around because there's a little bit of color still there, but I did wash the pen under water, just cool running water, and there's no more ink, even though it's just kind of stained from, because I was using these bright red and orange colors on here. So that's what the packaging looks like. This is sort of the way the set comes to your door. There's some instructions in here in terms of how to blend and tips for blending. And so I'm going to try to do a blending test as well. I was playing around with it a little bit earlier and I'm not super great. So that's something that is going to take a lot of practice for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start shaking these up and getting them activated. When you shake it, I hope you can hear that. Hear that little rattling? There's a little ball bearing or something in here that shakes the ink on the inside, gets it all mixed up. And so what you do is, as I was saying, you want to press on the blending palette to bring out your ink. So this pen has already been activated, so it was a little bit easier, but you'll see, I'll take a pen that I haven't, I think the purple I haven't activated. Yeah, so when it's new, the nib is completely white because there's no ink in there. You want to make sure when you're shaking these pens that the cap is on, because you can see how like runny or liquidy, I guess if that's a word, the ink is, and so you certainly don't want that spraying all over. And so again, you can hear when I'm shaking. I'm going to shake these up. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of the rest of these activated so we can do a little bit of a color test. Okay, so I've been shaking this green pen for quite some time and pressing it down on the blending palette, and you can just sort of start to see the green coming out into the nib of the pen. And so that's what you want to do. And so when it gets to this point, I kind of alternate between shaking it and pressing it. The part that's kind of challenging is you really don't want to press so hard that you're destroying the nib of your pen. And so there you can see the ink is starting to come out. So there we go. So that one is activated. Okay, so let me get the rest of these going as well. Okay, so I've taken the time to activate each of the pens, and what I thought I'd do is I'd go ahead and just get started. This is again the primary collection, and it is the 3mm nib, so it's that rounded, bolded nib, and I'm hoping I have this angled so you can see the ink is quite wet, so you definitely want to make sure you let it dry. But the surprising thing is, even though it's like a wet ink, it doesn't bleed through the page. The paper in these notebooks is so incredible that it really doesn't bleed through. You can see this is not great for writing small. It's kind of a thick line. But that's the red, and then I'm just going to go through and I'll swatch out each of the colors. Okay, so those are the 8 colors that come in the primary set. You can see when I was writing it out, the ink is really wet. You have to give it several seconds to dry. And then let's look at the flip side. You can see like this shadowing here is actually from my permanent ink pen, the one that I use on my Chrissy-Ann Design stickers. But you can see where I did the color swatching, the Acrylograph pens, there's no bleed through. And the paper, you know when you put watercolor on a paper that's not intended for watercolor, you can tell like it kind of like warps the paper a little bit. There's no warping to the paper, even though the ink is quite wet. So that's the primary collection. And then let's go ahead and move into the Cool Fall collection. So the Cool Fall collection is just beautiful. I love it. Once again, I have a white pen as well as a blender pen. And then the color palette is Midnight Moonlight, Blue Willow, Sweet Melon, Brick Red, Robin's Egg Blue, Moth Wing, Cocoa, and Pine Green. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the previous set. I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to give these a really good shake, get them nice and activated, and we will come back and do a color swatch of the Cool Fall collection. So I've activated the Midnight Moonlight, that's kind of a tongue twister, in the 7.7 millimeter, and I wanted to just show you the difference between the nibs so you can see the 3 millimeter versus the 0.7 millimeter. There's quite a bit of difference in the way the tip is shaped and just how much bolder that 3 millimeter is. So hopefully you can kind of, I'm getting all different angles of it. Okay, so let's get the rest of these activated. And similar to the 3 millimeter, you just kind of press on it until the ink starts flowing into the nib. This one was one that I played around with before, so it was kind of already started. I'm going to keep pressing that tip until I can see the ink starting to come out into the nib. There we go. You can kind of see how it's starting to flow through. It's a combination of shaking, pressing, and then here we go. That is a gorgeous color. Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so that one's activated. Okay, so I will just work my way through the rest of these. Okay, so starting with the Midnight Moonlight, this is definitely a better size nib for me in terms of writing because I'm a heavy-handed person when I write. I think this size is a little bit better for me in terms of being able to write with it. I love this collection. The colors in here are stunning. I'm just going to call this Midnight. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit the whole name, but you can tell because of the broader, bolder nib on the 3.0, I used caps when I wrote just because I needed a bigger stroke. But with this finer point, I can actually kind of do more of just a lowercase. Okay, so let's carry on. This one's Blue Willow. This is such a stunning color. What'll be interesting to see is, because the barrel of this pen is not very wide, it's not very fat. So I'm interested to know how long these pens will last, like how much ink is really in them and how much use will I be able to get out of it. So that'll be interesting. One of the other brands that I was kind of comparing or, compare shopping with is Posca, I believe, Posca or Posco. And just by the looks of those pens, they have a much kind of broader barrel to them. They're fatter in size. I don't know if that means they contain more ink. I think people tend to have their favorites, whether it's the Archer and Olive or the Pasco brand. But I thought I would start off with this brand because I loved the notebook, the notebook that I got. So I love this red. This is a gorgeous red too. These fall colors here. There was a cool fall set, which is the one I have here, obviously. And then there was also a warm fall set, which I think it would be interesting to have both, of course. But you definitely have to have sort of a different hand when you're using these because it's more of a liquid ink versus, like a gel pen or anything else. This is sort of the bright pen of the pack, which I think is pretty. Okay, So that is the Cool Fall collection in the 0.7 millimeter tip. So last but not least, we will move on to the Spring Vernal collection. Okay, so I have all of the Spring Vernal pens activated now. Again, I could not find individual color names for this collection. They don't sell these colors individually at the time that I was looking at them online. Maybe that's something they'll do in the future, and so we can find out color names. And again, this is a 0.7 millimeter nib, and so I'm going to start with this beautiful kind of pinkish color. Okay, so this is the Spring Vernal pack. Very delicate, light colors. Gorgeous, though. I, again, love this blue. The two different kind of peach melon colors. There is definitely a difference between the two, but they're very similar. And this was a surprise, the gold metallic. I really like this. They do have a full set of metallics. So if you wanted, if that's your thing, if you really like the metallics, you could get them in different colors like silver and that kind of stuff. And they have a whole pack of them. One of the color palettes that I know is really popular is called Jewel. That one was sold out at the time that I bought these. I bought these during one of their sales they recently had this summer. And so these were the three that I thought, let me get the primaries, you know, just kind of the basics. And then I did want to get something kind of fall related. We're coming into fall. I talked about this with my friend Megan from Megan B Plans It All. And we kind of decided, okay, get something kind of dark since they didn't have the Jewel collection. I got this cool fall and then get something pastel-y because if you've seen any of my Plan With Me's, you know I do a lot of pinks, a lot of blues, a lot of florals, that kind of thing. And so we thought kind of like a darker jewel color and then more of the pastel. So I really feel like I've got a nice range of colors here. So one of the things I wanted to do next, now that we've kind of swatched out the three collections that I have, was I thought I would try my hand at doing some blending and some layering. And so this is, you know, if I really want to get into this, friends, disclaimer, I'm not super artistic. Like I'm not a great at drawing. I'm not a great illustrator, but let's take this sheet here. I mapped out a couple little boxes for blending and for layering, and I thought we would just give this a try. Okay, so for this first blending exercise, what I thought I'd do is try to mix yellow and blue and make a green. I have my blending, and these are the 3 millimeter pens. I'm using these just because, like I said, they're a little bit bolder, so a little more of the ink comes out and flows out of them. I want to show you my blending pen. It is clean. It's stained because I was playing with it with the orange and the red, but I will show you on a piece of scrap white paper. When I rub it on the white paper, there's no color coming off of it. And what I did, like I said earlier, was I ran it under cold water, and then I have my little, this is just a muslin cloth, a little scrap of fabric, and I've been wiping my nibs clean. So I wiped it clean, and then just to make sure it's not super wet and smeary, I'm kind of running it on some plain paper. So that should blend. Now what I'm going to do is let's get a little bit of ink out onto the blending palette, and you have to work quickly because this ink dries really quickly. And so this technique, using the blending pen, I'm just getting some ink out onto the palette. There's my blue. And then I'm going to put some yellow out here. And you have to make sure that you get enough ink to mix the color that you want, right? If you're covering a big space, I'm gonna put a little more yellow in here. You gotta have enough ink to cover that space. So there you can kind of see I've got a little bit of a green going on. I'm gonna pick up as much ink on this nib as I can and then color this. So yeah, that's definitely a green. It's very blue. I could probably put a little more yellow to it, get it a little more brighter maybe. Again, friends, you are watching and learning with me as I go. There's a little bit of a different green. Again, it's getting a little more yellow there. Lightening it up because I've got a lot of blue on this palette. These pens, they're fun, but it is definitely work, friends. So it's not, I don't think it's for the faint of heart. You definitely need to put some work into these pens and getting the ink out and getting the colors you want. But you could see where that would make, like, blending all those greens could do like a really pretty leaf pattern, perhaps. So that's just kind of blending two colors to make a third, right? When you're thinking about your primary and secondary colors. So I'm just kind of wiping these off. I've got a little bit of blue on that yellow. So I just kind of want to find a clean spot on my rag and get that nice and clean. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. And then let me just get my blender clean. And again, you can just run it on a piece of white paper till you see all the ink is gone. Okay, so I wanted to show you cleaning your blending palette. So this ink here that I had just mixed is pretty dry now. And again, I just have my damp rag here, my little cloth, and I'm just gonna wipe this away. Check that out, that's pretty cool, right? It just wipes right off. My rag needs to be cleaner, but there we go. Okay, so the other type of blending, this is one that's really gonna take some practice for me. I'm not super good at this. So again, I took my blending pen, I ran it under the water. I just kind of ran it on some paper here, so I made sure that it was clean. There's no blue or green coming off on it, and that the blender is not like super wet. Okay, so I'm gonna try, this method is where you put some ink down and then you blend the two together. So I kind of got some ink here on my tabletop. So fingers crossed this works. This is kind of cool, I kind of like that. So I'm gonna put some orange here on this side. And then what I'm gonna do is blend some of that out with this yellow. I'll take my blender and just kind of blend between the two, kind of give it like a faded, like one's fading into the other. Again, I'm not super skilled at this yet. So there's that kind of blending that you can do. And then, let's see, maybe we can do, let's see what the red and the blue gets us. If I put, should get us some purple, right? Red and blue makes purple. Am I remembering that correctly? Again, working with these is kind of a challenge because they start out super wet, but then you can see how it's drying super duper quick. I don't know that I actually got like a purple there midway, but this is definitely going to take some practice on my part. That one I don't think worked out quite as well. I do like the way this kind of ombre and feathered. This too, again, I just needed more ink to kind of make a solid green. So now let's go in and let's try to play with some layering. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to put down some of this blue. And again, these 0.7 millimeters, you can see it's a little bit streaky. I might have to let it dry and go over it more than once just to get more of the ink out on the paper, because this is a finer tip pen. So I'm gonna lay a base down here. Okay, so I did 3 boxes here, kind of darker colors, so that I could try layering something lighter on top of it and see what that looks like. And so I'm just gonna do just a couple of little things just to see. I did let them dry really, really well. Oh wow, that does layer beautifully. Look at that, you don't see that darker color underneath at all. I'm just doing some crazy little flower samples here. And then I wanted to do something really, really light, like, yeah, this is truly opaque. Like, you don't see through it. And again, you can always put more layers if you felt like you weren't getting enough coverage. So this is really cute. I love that. I think that's really cool. And then I just want to try something white, like a little white polka dot. Put some little rays coming out of it like a sun, just to see the thin strokes. So pretty cool. I'm gonna try on this purple. Yeah, this is really nice the way this is coming out. Again, just trying some different colors. I want to try white again on each of them. Just doing little doodles here to see how these turn out. I'm going to do another little like flower type thing here, just to see how these work out. They definitely layer. Like, you definitely can do that. And then with the black, what I wanted to try out was, again, the white. That's pretty incredible. One thing I have a problem with is like white gel pens, but this, because it's not gel, this is really good. And then what I wanted to try was the gold. Oh my gosh. That layers beautifully. Like, you can really get some coverage on this. I think this would work great on black paper, this gold. And then let's try like something not quite so, this is I think the moth wing. Oh yeah, even like a dark on dark, you can still see that this is, it's colored. Let's see if this dark blue. Oh, that's amazing, because when you layer a dark on top of a dark, if this wasn't truly opaque, that black would come through, but you can definitely see that blue. I'm just making a little shape there so you can see the layering effect. Really, really neat. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be fun. Like, it's definitely work for sure. I'm just doing all kinds of different swatches now. Oh, look at that, like this lavender color on top here. It's a little streaky because I haven't really activated this pen. Reactivated it, but that's kind of cool too. Okay, so that's a little bit of the blending and the layering, and I did really have to let these boxes that I cut, this big space that I colored in, I really did have to let that dry before going in with the pen on top of it. And so here again, you see I have the 3 sets, the primary, the cool fall, and the spring vernal, and then just some of the blending and the layering, just kind of playing around. These pens are going to take just some time to get used to kind of get good at working them and making them work for you. So I hope you like this video, friends. It was a lot of work in the making. I was really intimidated by these pens, but I'm glad that I sat down with you all and kind of played around with them just to kind of get a feel for them. So if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you can catch future content on my channel. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.